We cannot solve the secondary migration problem without solving primarily migration. And this primarily migration is at our border. So Lukashenko regime now will see that European Union is able to react, is able to take the decisions, and is ready to defend itself. This is most important issue, most important news from this European Union Council. Thank you.
You did too much shot. Michel, you changed?
Yes, we. Welcome to the press conference following the European Council, also for those who are joining us remotely. Please, President, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup. Voilà, nous clôturons 2 journées de débat au Conseil européen, comme vous le savez, avec un menu politique qui était lourd, avec des sujets difficiles et pour lesquels, sur chacun des thèmes, je pense pouvoir dire que des pas en avant ont pu être réalisés. D'abord, un premier mot sur le thème État de droit qui a été abordé hier après-midi. Et ce débat, qui s'est déroulé de manière plutôt sereine, a été l'occasion de constater que nous sommes chacune et chacun convaincus que l'état de droit, l'indépendance de la justice sont des principes fondamentaux et nous mesurons que nous avons à notre disposition des instruments juridiques, des instruments institutionnels qui soit sont déjà activés, soit qui peuvent être activés. Nous avons aussi considéré que le dialogue politique était nécessaire, il devait se poursuivre et il devait être mobilisé, ce dialogue politique, avec l'objectif de trouver des solutions et de faire des progrès sur ce sujet qui est un sujet évidemment essentiel. Enfin, nous avons démarré, comme vous le savez, la réunion hier par un sujet qui nous mobilise partout en Europe et dans le monde également, la question énergétique. Une question extrêmement importante parce qu'elle a un impact sur les ménages, sur les familles, sur leur pouvoir d'achat, sur la situation des entreprises également en Europe. Et au départ de la toolbox, la boîte à outils proposée et présentée par la Commission européenne, nous avons constaté que des mesures sont déjà activées sur le plan national, peuvent l'être également, et cette boîte à outils offre un certain nombre d'options qui peuvent être activées avec de la cohérence au départ de décisions nationales. On a aussi eu l'occasion d'un débat, je crois, très utile pour identifier les thèmes au départ desquels nous pensons que l'Union européenne devrait agir davantage en coopération, en coordination, et cet échange de vues a permis vraiment de faire des pas en avant en termes de convergence de vues, même si sur certains thèmes, les débats vont devoir se poursuivre. Et plus particulièrement, nous voyons bien que la question du fonctionnement du marché est évidemment une question à laquelle nous sommes extrêmement attachés, d'où cette idée de prendre en considération une étude avec l'appui des experts afin de prendre des décisions judicieuses inspirées par l'objectivation des informations, par l'objectivation des données. Et vous vous doutez que la dimension géopolitique de ce débat a aussi donné lieu à beaucoup d'échanges importants entre nous. Et nous suivons bien entendu aussi les annonces qui ont déjà été faites par la Commission et que certainement la Commission exprimera encore en lien avec les thèmes qui touchent à cette question énergétique. Enfin, un mot rapidement sur le Covid-19. About COVID-19, we all agree we must remain vigilant. We are making a lot of progress and the vaccination is working very well, but at the same time we are all aware that we face and we can face, not only in Europe but also outside of Europe, some difficulties that are related to the vaccination to the vaccination hesitancy, and that's why it's also important to cooperate, to coordinate in order to make also progress on this challenge. The support for the third countries is also a priority, and you know that since the very beginning we have decided to maintain the exportations from Europe. It's a very strong choice, and you know that we also worked very hard in order to launch with other partners COVAX and to make sure that our member states can demonstrate the European solidarity together with the Commission and based on the decisions that are taken by the Commission. Enfin, dans la soirée hier, au moment du dîner, vous savez, nous avons eu un débat stratégique en lien avec le commerce, sans conclusion écrite. C'était le souhait de ne pas être obsédé par un texte, mais plutôt de s'écouter mutuellement. Et cela a permis de mettre en évidence plusieurs éléments, avec aussi des convergences qu'on a pu constater. D'une part, le souhait que les méthodes, depuis le débat sur le mandat de négociation, jusqu'à la ratification des parlements, soient empreintes de transparence et qu'il y ait la mobilisation mobilisation des sociétés civiles, des parlements nationaux, du Parlement européen. La transparence est un levier pour faire réussir cette capacité à mener à bien des négociations commerciales. Deuxième élément, il ressort de nos échanges qu'il y a une conviction. Le commerce et cet instrument et cette politique est un levier pour de la prospérité et pour des emplois supplémentaires. Mais aussi une conviction, on doit avoir l'ambition au départ de cette politique commerciale de promouvoir des standards importants pour nous. Par exemple, en matière environnementale et climatique, par exemple, en matière sociale également, et certainement en matière de droits fondamentaux, identifier nos priorités et être aussi engagé dans le cadre des réformes de l'Organisation mondiale du commerce. Voilà quelques-uns ou quelques-unes des lignes de force qui ressortent de ce débat, et certainement nous allons pouvoir continuer après cette première étape stratégique nos travaux sur ce sujet-là. Je suis très bref sur les sujets internationaux, préparation des prochaines réunions et sommets internationaux. Je me réfère aux thèses et conclusions sur le sujet. Et puis enfin, aujourd'hui a été un moment particulier ce matin parce que nous avons commencé par rendre un hommage à deux de nos collègues, Stefan Löfven et Angela Merkel. Et nous avons eu l'occasion d'exprimer notre gratitude, nos remerciements pour tout ce qu'ils ont apporté pour Angela Merkel pendant 16 ans par sa contribution au Conseil européen, pour Stefan Löfven pendant 7 ans par son engagement au Conseil européen. Et donc c'est aussi une indication qu'il y a une réalité humaine autour de cette table européenne, cette table du Conseil européen. Il y a beaucoup d'engagement politique, de professionnalisme, de conviction, mais aussi une réalité dans la chaleur des contacts humains et des interactions personnelles qui sont importantes, qui participent aussi de ce projet européen. We have discussed this afternoon migration, and you know that migration is never an easy topic, not in Europe, but also not outside of Europe. But I can tell you that I had, after this general debate, and before we started to discuss the drafting, I had a positive impression because we had experience in the past, also at the level of European Council. We discussed in the past many times the migration topics, and very often it was a very difficult debate with many difficulties, very difficult to listen to each other, to understand what are the different opinions around the table. And here I felt more and more convergence because we understand that we have the same goals. We think that it's important to address this challenge, being more united, being more able to deliver, being more operational. And I see two important dimensions. The first one is the external dimension. And the last weeks, the last months, maybe it was not so visible because of COVID-19 and other important challenges that we were facing. But with the support of the Commission, we have worked very hard in order to clarify what are the concrete priorities when we say the external dimension. What does it mean? What are the tools that we want to activate? What are the financial means that we want to mobilize in order to deliver on this first important topic, the external dimension? And of course, it will be needed to continue and to maintain our efforts on this topic, point one. And point two, we know that the internal dimension is always something that could be sensitive, but we had the opportunity to listen to the different opinions, and I have really the impression, without being naive, without underestimating the magnitude of the difficulties on such a topic, but I have the impression that today we have opened a window of opportunity in order to try in the next months, weeks and months, to make progress and to deliver. And we know that there are concrete proposals put on the table for many months by the Commission. This is a starting point, different opinions on the starting point, but I have the impression that maybe there is a space for more political will in order to try to make more progress on this important issue. Enfin, d'un mot seulement, la question digitale est une question centrale pour notre avenir commun au sein de l'Union européenne, et le temps limité sur l'ensemble du sommet qui a été consacré à la question digitale ne reflète pas la magnitude et l'importance de cet enjeu. Et je le disais en conclusion avec le sourire, mais parfois au Conseil européen, les thèmes pour lesquels il y a une unité forte à la fois sur l'ambition, l'objectif et la manière de parvenir à l'objectif sont des thèmes dont on parle moins au Conseil européen. C'est pas pour ça qu'ils ne sont pas importants, c'est pas pour ça qu'ils ne sont pas fondamentaux dans le nouveau paradigme de prospérité vers lequel nous allons, mais je vous rends attentif à ce sujet parce que ces conclusions sont fortes, elles sont ambitieuses, elles montrent la parfaite coordination, la parfaite coopération entre les institutions européennes, chacun dans son rôle, Commission, Parlement, Conseil européen également, et cette conclusion, je pense, fixe à nouveau un cap, une boussole pour permettre de façon opérationnelle de délivrer sur ces sujets importants pour l'innovation, pour l'emploi, pour la cybersécurité, pour la question des données, pour les principes fondamentaux de liberté personnelle que l'on va prendre en considération sur ce sujet. Voilà quelques-uns des éléments que je souhaitais partager avec vous cet après-midi. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Mr. President. Madam President, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Barend. Good afternoon. So I would like to start with the discussion we had yesterday on the energy prices. The rising energy prices are a real concern for consumers and business, and we know that this is a global situation. But it bears lessons that we need to implement right here in Europe too, and that was the discussion all about. First of all, in the short term, we need to support vulnerable consumers and heavily exposed businesses. And member states are already doing it. Round about 20 member states have taken measures or they have announced measures. But this is only for the short term. If you look at the mid and long term, we will work on additional steps. To increase resilience and independence, we have agreed to explore how to establish a strategic gas reserve. Also to explore the possibilities of a joint procurement. We will intensify our outreach to the different suppliers, also to diversify the supply we do have, and we have to speed up the work on interconnections. In parallel, we will assess the functioning of the gas and electricity market itself and the ETS market, and we will report back on that later this year at the next possibility where the topic is on the Council's agenda. And that leads me to the energy mix of the future. It's obvious that we need more renewable and clean energy. If you look at the production price of renewables, it has considerably decreased for solar. It is 10 times cheaper today than a decade ago. Wind energy, very volatile, but it is 50% cheaper than it was a decade ago. So that's the way to go. They are carbon-free and they are homegrown, so a lot of independence is in that. Alongside this, we need a stable source, nuclear, and during the transition, of course, natural gas. And this is why, as we've already stated as a Commission in April, we will come forward with our taxonomy proposal. The second topic yesterday evening was indeed the rule of law. We had important discussions on not only the rule of law, but also the judicial independence. And I welcome that we had that discussion. The rule of law is at the heart of our union. We all have a stake in this crucial issue because we know that the rule of law ensures mutual trust. It gives legal certainty throughout the European Union, and it gives equality between member states and for each and every citizen of the European Union. A fundamental pillar of the rule of law is the judicial independence. And this was the core of the leaders' discussion concerning Poland. We have a long road ahead of us. This road is a combination of dialogue, legal response and concrete action to restore the independence of the judiciary. Among other requirements, the European Court of Justice ruled in July that the disciplinary regime for judges had to be overhauled and unlawfully dismissed judges have to be reinstated. and we expect Poland to implement this ruling. Another topic that we've been discussing, and that was today, is the critical situation in Afghanistan. Right now, Afghan people need desperately food, water, shelter, and access to healthcare. Every second person in Afghanistan is in need of humanitarian support. And Europe is taking a leadership position here in the global solidarity effort. Last week, I presented an Afghan support package worth €1 billion, and it prioritizes the humanitarian needs. We need to make sure that displaced Afghans are supported internally or in the neighboring countries. And this is why we are also supporting Afghanistan's neighborhood under the support package we have put forward. Migration was, as Charles Michel said, a key topic of the discussion today. We are very concerned about the situation at the borders with Belarus. We consider the behavior of the Belarus government as a hybrid attack. The people used by Lukashenko are victims. We must help them. No one's life should be used for political issues. And this is an instrumentalization of migration to put political pressure on the European Union. We will keep up the pressure on the Lukashenko regime. We have already proposed targeted measures to reverse visa facilitation for the regime and its proxies, and we are ready to explore options for further sanctions, not only for individuals, but also for entities or companies. Second, we agreed that we need concerted action. Belarus, as we are observing now, is looking at opening new routes. It has offered further visa waivers to additional third countries, and we will continue our engagement with these countries to limit this state-sponsored smuggling. We have also discussed the situation in the Mediterranean and the need to strengthen our cooperation with key third countries. And all this brings to light, indeed, the need for a coherent and effective common migration and asylum policy. I reiterated my call to leaders to make progress on the new pact on migration and asylum. It is there, it's on the table, it has to be negotiated, it has to be advanced. So there is really an urge to the leaders to move forward and to negotiate that package. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam President. We'll first take a few questions here in the room. Dorota, you were first. Yes, please move to the stand.
Hi, it's Dorota from Polish TV Polsat. I have a question for both of you. It's the first time that the topic of rule of law was discussed during the EU summit. But what you are saying seems to me that there has not been much decided. What has actually changed after these 2 hours discussion with the Polish Prime Minister? You have the same expectations you had before. The subject is not in the official conclusions of the summit. Why is that? And what is new after talking about rule of law in Poland for 2 hours? Thank you.
First element, it's not the first time that you address rule of law at the level of the European Council. I'll give you one well-known example. About 1 year ago in July, when we agreed on the net European budget and the MFF, we spent a lot of time in order to decide the conditionality and to strengthen the European tools, which is a demonstration that for all of us, for the 27 member states, for the European institutions, rule of law is an important fundamental principle, point one. Point two, this is true that it was not the role to take a decision on this case. Why? Because we have also a European rule of law. It means that there is a division of labour between institutions with legal tools, with institutional tools. And the President of the Commission had the opportunity yesterday to explain, to clarify what are the ongoing procedures, what are the different options, what are the different tools. Point two. Point three, it doesn't mean that the European Council should paper over. It's important indeed to address politically and to have a political dialogue. And that's why I can repeat that we felt yesterday a strong political message from many leaders in order also to continue all the efforts to continue the political dialogue that's also needed at the level of the Council and the European Council, because there is one goal. This is to listen to each other, to understand what are the exact problems, to be precise, to avoid the ambiguities, in order to deliver solutions. This should be our goal. It's not enough just to observe that there would be irritations on different sides around the table. What's important for us, collectively, for this European project, this is the ability to deliver and to make sure that we'll be able to find solutions. This must be our common goal.
Yes, if we look at the timelines, there has been the ruling of the European Court of Justice concerning the disciplinary chamber, the disciplinary regime, and this is a recent ruling, and this has to be followed by the Polish government. Otherwise, the European Court of Justice will take further steps. And then there's a parallel process. There has been recently the ruling of the Constitutional Tribunal concerning or challenging, for example, articles in our treaties. This ruling is a fundamental change, and it is relatively fresh, new. So we are right now assessing it, and 2 days ago or 3 days ago now, I have laid down in the European Parliament detailed what the different options are to have a legal response, of course accompanied by dialogue, and hopefully followed by concrete actions of the Polish government. And we are at the beginning of this process now, so right here I think it was very important that the leaders discussed that topic, because we all have to take our responsibility in that matter.
Thank you. Next question is for Irini, please.
Irini Zarkadula with the Greek Public TV and Athens News Agency. According to the conclusions on migration, quote, the EU remains determined to ensure effective control of its external borders, unquote. How EU is going to do so, since migration has been turned to a much more complex issue that affects different parts of the EU with different needs. For example, Poland and Lithuania and Latvia from the one part, and on the other part, Cyprus and Greece. Thank you.
No, this is true. There are different situations, and it's important to be able to take into account all the specificities and all the concrete situations that you are facing. This is one first point. One second point, and this was said by Ursula, it is very clear that we collectively we condemn the use by third countries of migration, irregular migration, as hybrid threats against some of the member states and against the EU. This is an important basic principle. And based on that, we understand it is important to strengthen our tools in order to control our external borders. And we decided to propose to the Commission to look at different options in order to strengthen the concrete support that we can deliver to the countries when they are at the front line, when they are protecting the external borders. And we had a very good debate on that, because we understood very well that there is a legal framework. This is the basis, and we are ready to assess if it's needed to change or not. Maybe it's not needed, this legal framework. And also we will take into account the possible proposals and concrete measures that the Commission will put on the table based on the assessments that will be made. But we understand the sense of urgency. We understand very well the sense of urgency. We understand that it's very important to be able to act as quickly as possible. And that's why you understood, even if this is a difficult debate, this is a difficult situation in many countries, we had the impression, that there is a political window of opportunity in order to be more committed politically and in order to negotiate and to try to find a common agreement, because it was very clear for many colleagues, they were very clear that we must be united. When we are not united, we are weaker, and if we are united, we are able to overcome the difficulties.
Yes, you were mentioning a few of our member states, indeed. The Commission has, along the course, always supported these member states and will, of course, support them in this critical situation at their borders. And there are different approaches. As you know, Commissioner Ylva Johansson and Vice President Margrethe Skinas have visited several times these member states really to have an own impression on how to help. We sent Frontex, EASO, the agency to support the management at the border, and of course there is financial support for better border management. So this is the very practical work on the ground that is ongoing. And then indeed there was an agreement which is also found in the conclusions that we will look at the necessary legal measures to improve the situation. One is, for example, that we are looking into the Schengen Border Code. That will be on the table anyhow as a new proposal, but there include provisions concerning this instrumentalization of migration, state-sponsored smuggling that we see at the moment being. And of course, there is the new pact on migration and asylum. This is the most important legal framework that we should move on and work with.
Griselda, vous avez la prochaine question.
Merci beaucoup. C'est la première fois en salle de presse depuis beaucoup de temps. Alors merci beaucoup d'avoir réouvert. J'espère que la prochaine fois on pourra être tous ici si nécessaire. Ma question est sur le prix de l'énergie. Donc j'aimerais savoir qu'est-ce que vous croyez qui peut changer en décembre. C'est une question pour Monsieur Michel qui a été en contact un peu avec les uns et les autres. Et puis pour Madame von der Leyen, c'est évident que le chef de gouvernement de des pays où les citoyens souffrent plus ces prix en hausse, dont l'Espagne et l'Italie, ont été très critiques avec la communication de la Commission européenne. Ils ont dit qu'elle n'était pas à l'auteur de la crise et qu'elle manquait d'ambition. J'aimerais savoir quelle est votre réponse, si vous croyez que c'est une analyse juste, ou bien s'il y a quelque chose que ce gouvernement cache derrière la critique à l'Union. Merci beaucoup.
Le premier élément, nous sommes tous attachés au bon fonctionnement du marché de l'électricité. Ça, c'est le point de départ. Nous sommes tous attachés à ce bon fonctionnement du marché de l'électricité. Et dans le même temps, on voit bien que les développements des dernières semaines, avec des hausses spectaculaires des prix du gaz et de l'énergie de manière plus générale, mettent en lumière un certain nombre de questions qui sont posées. Et en cela, je pense que la manière de travailler est une manière très rationnelle, puisque nous avons décidé ensemble de proposer que des études qui, pour certaines d'entre elles, avaient déjà démarré, puissent se clôturer ou s'élargir dans l'objet qui est étudié, notamment en travaillant avec les différents régulateurs nationaux qui sont impliqués dans ces études, afin de pouvoir constater le plus vite possible, et probablement déjà dans le courant du mois de novembre, quels sont les résultats de ces analyses. Et sur base des résultats de ces analyses, il sera possible pour la Commission de faire des propositions. Ursula en dira sans doute davantage. Et nous aurons l'occasion au Conseil européen du mois de décembre de revenir sur ce sujet en étant mieux informés. Et vous savez, ça n'est pas un secret. Et comme vous êtes de bons journalistes et que vous faites bien votre travail, vous savez qu'une partie du débat hier a été consacrée aux inquiétudes en lien avec des spéculations possibles sur le système ETS. Et nous avons échangé différents points de vue, différentes analyses en lien avec cela. L'étude devrait avoir le mérite d'objectiver, de clarifier, de stabiliser l'information pour qu'avec une information neutre, objective, partagée par tout le monde, on puisse voir s'il est nécessaire ou pas de déployer un certain nombre d'initiatives dans ce cadre-là. Mais je dirais, en résumé, sans être trop long bien sûr, mais il y a d'une part ce que l'on peut faire sur le plan national dans le plus court terme, et beaucoup de pays très rapidement et très courageusement ont pris un certain nombre de décisions, inspirées d'ailleurs souvent par la toolbox de la Commission. Et puis on mesure bien que le cadre européen peut déployer des initiatives qui vont plus s'inscrire dans le moyen et dans le long terme. Donc il y a un langage de vérité. Il n'y a pas l'intention de faire croire qu'il y a des choses qui peuvent être faites sur le plan européen qui auraient un impact demain ou après-demain. Probablement les actions européennes s'inscrivent plus dans un raisonnement de moyen et de long terme. Et encore une fois, la question géopolitique est une question qui nous a occupés aussi, parce qu'on mesure bien que ce sujet-là nécessite de regarder de manière large la situation en prenant en compte les différents éléments internationaux.
There was a lot of support for the toolbox and the communication. So for the short term, indeed, there is also overwhelming agreement among the member states that in the short term it is necessary in those countries who have these problems to support the vulnerable households and the mostly affected businesses. And we should not forget that approximately 35 to 40% of the electricity price is taxes and levies. And therefore, many member states have taken this as a possibility either to take the revenues and to subsidize or to reduce taxes and levies to take off pressure from the electricity price. And on top, the member states have 10 billion more as revenues from the emission trading system. They are also able to invest in supporting the vulnerable households and the businesses at risk. That is the short term. And then indeed we had a very good discussion on looking into is it good and necessary over time to have a strategic common gas reserve? So not as today that it is fragmented and not very strategically applied. Second, to explore at least the possibility among those voluntarily who want it to have joint procurement over time. And then indeed the question is looking at the electricity market. As you know, today it is organized that we have all the different energy sources from renewable to nuclear to fossil fuel, all together in one price, electricity, and coupled with the gas price that is at the moment being driving up the electricity prices. And the question is this combination still the right one for the future, or do we have to adapt? Because renewables and nuclear are homegrown, so we are independent, while we import 90% of the gas we use. Acer has the task to put up a study with first results mid-November so that we can report to the European Council then in December. And indeed, ESMA, that's another agency or authority, will look into the gas market specifically and the ETS market specifically to have a look whether there are any kind of speculations. We do not have any evidence so far or not.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll take a question remotely as well. Patrizia Antonini from ANSA.
Thank you. Thank you for the floor. Good afternoon. I have a couple of questions, and the first one is about migration. I hear there was a discussion on barbed wires and wires at the external borders financed by the EU. So I would like to know what the Commission answered to this request. I also would like to understand whether you think that after last night's discussion, there is a clear-cut support of the member states for an action like Article 7 or on the triggering of the conditionality on the EU budget and the fund. Thank you.
The last question was Article 7 rule of law.
And the conditionality mechanism.
The Article 7 or the conditionality mechanism?
Yes.
Yeah, in the first one was about...
Yeah, this one I got. Because, sorry, that we're chit-chatting here, but I had a problem with understanding the second question. Should I, yeah, indeed, the first question was for me, absolutely. Yes, there was a discussion, as you know, there is funding of border management by the European budget. And, of course, not only equipment or partly personnel, but also or the electronics that are necessary, but also so-called infrastructure. And indeed, there was a discussion on the so-called physical infrastructure, and I was very clear that there is a long-standing comment in the Commission and with the European Parliament that there will be no funding of barbed wire and walls. And your second question was if it goes on the question of conditionality mechanism. Here we also have a very clear setting. The conditionality mechanism, we need to develop the guidelines. We're in the process to develop the guidelines. Indeed, in parallel, the European Court of Justice has to judge on a request from Hungary and Poland whether this conditionality mechanism is legally sound. I put it in my words. So we will look at the result of this judgment to include it in possible guidelines as we have discussed in the Council and as I've laid down in the European Parliament. No case is lost since January because, of course, we gather all the necessary information. No measures will be taken before the ruling, but, of course, we can send letters, ask for information or questions that are necessary to be asked. So that is the setting of the conditionality mechanism. I hope I answered the question because I only got half of it.
Thank you. This concludes our press conference for today. Thank you for joining us, also remotely. Conclusions have been published on our Council website. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, you changed.